There's a line in there about being the breath of heaven, and it just stops on the I am, where you start to realize that so much separates us from one another, and yet one thing unites us with one another, and that's this: the idea, the truth, that there is only one divine energy. And if we just want to talk scientific, there's one force, one vibration, and we are all it. There's no separation within that vibration. There is no separation in that energy. There is no God here, God there. There is just one thing going on. And we get to individualize it our own unique ways. And I think sometimes when we individualize it, we focus more on the individualization than on the wholeness. We spend so much time being unique and being different and wanting to make sure we make our mark. And yet, the mark's been made. I am the mark. You are the mark. There's only one mark. It's very emotional hearing that song. I'm so glad I didn't rewrite those lyrics, as if they would have been so much better. Even the idea of breath of heaven. It's all about breath. It's all about the energy, the spirit, that energy. And what I have to talk about today, which was well before this happened, our theme this month is Awaken, right? And last week my talk was called By Design. That all of this is by design. None of it's happenstance. None of it, as Ernest Holmes says, is willy-nilly. It's all just by design. I was designed this way. And I made what I made out of that design, my own unique version of it. But we are all, by design, God. Some version of that perfection. And I used Eckhart Tolle's quote, always say yes to the present moment, surrender to what is. Because I realized that surrendering is really our job. To surrender to all of this, to all of it. And that means use what you have. Surrender to what you have. How often do you spend time looking at what you don't have? Or looking at what someone else has? Or wishing you could be that person? Or wishing whatever? Just surrender to what you have, because no one has what you have. We all have something very unique. So, when I say use what you have, I also mean your surroundings. Meaning, what's going on in your life? What's happening in your life? Use it. Do you use it, or do you try to avoid it? There's a little saying in religious science called the spiritual bypass. Does everybody know what that means? Who doesn't know what that means? Janet, the Catholic. Okay, so that's very funny. So a spiritual bypass means, well, I'll tell you a little story. Everybody's heard who has not heard my story about the apartment during the earthquake? 3 people. Great. So I'm going to tell it anyway. So at the Northridge earthquake, my house fell down that I was in, and the landlord was a religious scientist, which is why I rented her house. So she came over. The house has fallen down. Most of the walls, right, had fallen down, our big wall. And she came over, and she went, God will provide. Now, at first, I was like, oh, that's great. So about a week later, I'm like, Rose, what are we doing? She goes, God will provide. And I was like, now I'm not as happy with God providing, because Rose seems to think God's showing up to do this. Until finally, end of story, I said to her, Rose, I'm not paying rent anymore. I'm going to keep the rent. I'm going to use the rent to fix this wall. Once I've fixed the wall and I've used up all of the rent that I would have paid you, I will then start paying rent again. She said, see, God will provide. That is a spiritual bypass. Meaning, I don't deal with anything. God will provide. It's not my job. Well, guess what? If you're God, you better do something, because no one else is coming along, because that's the way it works. You are responsible for the life you live. So, spiritual bypass means that we tend to ignore the stuff that's going on in our lives. We pretend it's not there, or we just wish it would go away, or we wish somebody would come and fix it. No, I get it. I grew up Catholic, no offense, Janet, and the Catholic Church did teach me that God would take care of things. Now, the Catholic Church also taught me God is everywhere, which means I must be part of that. We have to get a little clearer on that in the Catholic faith, I think, to just be able to say, yes, God is everywhere, therefore that's what you are, right? So spiritual bypass. So what I'm going to talk about today is the idea of you using everything in your life for your benefit. Wouldn't you like that? Wouldn't you like to be able to look at everything that's going on in your life, no matter what it is doing for you or to you, and use it for your highest and best, no matter what? Which means your past is all for your good. How many of you, don't raise your hands, but how many of you, you don't want to, how many of you have a past that you would not like to have be part of your present? I think a lot of us have things in our past. Oh, Heather, okay. A lot of us have things in the past we'd like to avoid, ignore. It's very possible that those things in the past that you are avoiding and ignoring and just being happy that you're past, they're still active in your life today. They're still working somewhere. They've contributed to your belief system. And your beliefs are what's driving your life. So what if we could actually say, instead of spiritual bypassing our way through life, say, everything that has happened to me up to this moment has been for my highest good, and I use it that way. That's surrendering to all of it. And I do mean all of it. You know, it does not pass me lightly that today, a year ago, was when we celebrated Nora's life. The 22nd was her celebration of life. All of it has to be for my highest and best. God knows it was for hers. It's for Lori Donato's. It's for any one of your family, friends, or loved ones who have passed. It just means they've gone to this next thing. We sometimes feel left behind, but it's still for the highest and best. And we have to reconcile that with ourselves, surrender to that. So the title of my talk today is called The Christmas Hawk. You may wonder why that's the title of my talk, The Christmas Hawk. Well, I'll tell you, because Alex, sitting here, stand up, Alex, for 1 second. That's Alex, you can sit down. So Alex was in a conversation with me this week, and she started telling me this story about a hawk. You were in your backyard, right? Yeah, in her backyard, and watching this hawk. And she was talking about how she watched this hawk seem like almost still in the sky, and it was kind of a nice windy day, and the wind was moving around, but the hawk looked perfectly still, almost like somebody placed it up in the sky and just put it there and said, "You stay right here." So what was that hawk doing to be so still? What was that hawk doing to be able to navigate all of that wind so brilliantly? And this is a great picture. Well, it was actually using every one of its surrounding things. It was using the elements. It was using the breath of heaven. It was using the air. It was using the currents. It was using the vibrations. And it wasn't fighting against it. Oh, no. It wasn't fighting against it at all. In fact, it just became one with everything that was going on in that moment. And in becoming one with all of it, not saying some of it's bad, some of it's good. I wish that hadn't happened. Oh, I wish it was a sunnier day. I wish that wind was coming from the other direction. It wasn't judging any of it. It surrendered to all of it. And it just stood there, flew there, laid there, operated there, soared there, thank you. O-A-R-D, not W-O-R-D, right? And it just was there. It was just there. What if that was our life? We're just here for a good reason, to enjoy the elements. Even when a stiff wind comes along, to enjoy it. Because to recognize, maybe for the first time, I am the wind. It's not separate from me. I honestly believe that's what these brilliant animals know. I think they know something we know, but because we're human and we're so much smarter, we have thought our way away from knowing the truth of who we are. We have used critical thinking to argue ourselves into a dilemma where we think we're separate. So when Alex was telling me this story, and it really touched me. I asked her right away, I said, "Can I talk about that on Sunday?" She said, "Absolutely. Just make sure you say it's my story." And she didn't say that, but I did say I'd say it was your story. That was a present to me. because there are a lot of wins in my life. How many people here have some wins in their life right now? Yeah, we all have some wins in our life, things that are just blowing us maybe a little this way, a little that way. And it's not bad. You know, if you do get blown off course, there comes a moment when you are finally... How many people here go cross-country skiing? I know, we're in California. So that's 5 of us. So I went cross-country skiing when I was living on the East Coast. And I remember this one time I went, and it was the first time I went, and it was exhausting. I'm thinking cross-country skiing. I'm thinking something moves me along. And I just watch the wind. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. And no, it was not a beautiful day in the neighborhood. And I thought I was going to die on these trails. And so it's exhausting. I mean, you are in charge of going, of making yourself go. And I remember just thinking at one point, really thinking, I am going to die in the snow, and no one's going to find me for years. Because everybody I went with was ahead of me and forgot I was even with them because I was so freaking slow. And they were just like, just catch up to us. And I'm like, and then there came one moment and I just kind of just went, I was like, whatever. And I just started going. And all of a sudden, the whatever stopped me from fighting it. I stopped fighting, and all of a sudden it was a little bit easier, and I was gliding better. And all of a sudden, I had caught up to them. And I learned a great lesson. Find better friends. And I have done that. I don't know any of those people anymore. No, that's not the truth. I know one of them. So, surrender. We have worked so hard to make our lives difficult, to make our lives challenging, and to think that those challenges are somehow derailing us. But that's not it. You and I need to be what the hawk is, a master of the environment. We need to master our environments. We need to master our relationships. We need to master our finances. How many people would like better mastery over their finances? Right. That's only all it is an element. It's just part of the elements of your life. That's all it is. Money is nothing but energy. That's all it is. It's not this stuff. It's not the bills that come in. No, it's just energy. And you either flow with the energy or you fight it. Most people fight energy when it comes to finances. We need to get mastery, to become masters of our own consciousness, of our minds, of our creativity. I guarantee you, every single person in this room has more creativity in them than they're using. More ideas that they want to just explode onto the world. More of who you are to be used. It just means we need to become masters of that. And our bodies. You know, I'm so excited that that BODS, being our dynamic selves, is part of Welcome Home. Because it means, you know, here in Westlake, once a week, people will get to sit in this sanctuary and deal with their bodies. Really become masters over their bodies, which means becoming masters of their conscious mind, because your body represents what your mind is doing. No matter how you look at it, you can take every diet there is and deprive yourself of every food that you think is fattening, but at the end of the day, if you still see yourself as someone who is either overweight or out of shape, that's who you become. It doesn't matter what you're doing on the outside. But if your mind matches the image you have for yourself, you're actually going to eat better, you're going to exercise, you're going to take care of your body, and it's going to match what your conscious mind knows about yourself. We will get to do that every single Saturday, which is amazing. Masters over our bodies. Masters over the environment. That's who we have to become. Ernest Holmes said this: we see fragments when the whole is at hand. We see fragments where the whole is at hand. Meaning we focus on these things that take us off course. Could you imagine if that hawk was up there? Actually, I was just going to say something that he probably does do. Sees another bird and goes, oh, but that's because he's going to eat it. But let's just pretend he doesn't eat other meat. I was like, my head was like, that's not going to work. But could you imagine if it saw a wind and started a bolt of something over here of energy, like a wind, and it just suddenly started to fight it? Everything that the hawk is naturally would go out the window. Every time you pick up some challenge, something that is causing you to be distracted, who you are innately kind of gets thrown out the window while you start focusing on this challenge here. What if we actually saw a challenge, threw nothing out the window, and came towards that, whatever it is, as the wholeness of life? That's what remembering who you are is all about. What if that's how you dealt with every situation? What if the first thing we said was, I know who I am, no matter what happened? Fragments. Now this name, I'm going to pronounce the best I can. Mizuta Masahide. Does that sound good? No one knows him? That's exactly how you pronounce it. Mizuta Masahide said this: my barn having burned down, I can now see the moon. Isn't that cool? My barn having burned down, I can now see the moon. How many barns do you need to burn down right now? You know, we're getting towards the end of this year. It's time to do some barn burning because we need to see the moon. We need to know the truth. That means we got to get rid of the untruths. We have to be willing to burn away all the stuff that doesn't work in our lives. And it doesn't take a lot of work. It takes a decision to actually do that. Maya Angelou said, I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. Where in your life are you still allowing things to reduce you? Where in your life are you still looking back on some things maybe that you did in the past? Has anyone here done something in the past that they're ashamed of? Dr. Jim? Never. Okay, other than Dr. Jim Lockhart. Not we all have stuff that we maybe are ashamed of or wish. How many of you wish you did something better? Right. We all wish we had done something better. Well, what if in fact you did it the best you could? Really? What if in fact you did it the best you could possibly do at that moment? That's what I do. I go back and I look and I go, you know what? I wasn't who I am now then. I didn't know it. There are so many things I could have done better. I may look at this talk later and go, I could have done that better. I doubt it, but I might. Because I just won't do that to myself anymore. Why do that? Burn that barn down. Self-judgment? Who still has self-judgment going on? Burn it down. Burn it down. It doesn't do you any good. What good does it do you to judge yourself? There's a big difference between judging yourself and making sense out of what you did. And perhaps choosing a different path the next time. That's fine. But judging yourself, holding yourself to standards, whose standards? We don't have somebody outside of ourselves telling us what the standards should be, unless you're married. That was a joke. Sort of. What? He's not laughing. No, he's not. Yeah. He'll talk to me about it later when he tells me what standard I should have been using.
How you could have improved your talk.
We're like George Burns and Gracie Allen. Wait, George Burns and Gracie Allen. So, are we or are we not standing in the center of the pure potentiality of the universe that says wherever you want to go, it's yours to go there? We are. And it never says that you are the pure potentiality of the universe. You can accomplish anything, be anyone you wish to be, do anything in any situation, depending on what you've done up to this point. It doesn't say that. There's no caveat. There's no yeah buts. It's just, this is who I am. Period, end of sentence. Do you think this hawk is thinking to itself, ooh, I flew this way last time. Last time the weather was bad. Maybe this is going to not go so well. No. It doesn't have, as far as I know, the capacity to judge itself that way or to judge the past. It just moves forward. The hawk may encounter a strong wind, and it may change his course, but it doesn't diminish the ability to use it and master it. So if Maya Angelou says, change may happen, I can be changed by what's going on in my life, but it will not diminish me. Yeah, you're going to have some things happen. Stuff happens. And it may even change you. This year has been an amazing game changer for me. Everything has changed. I don't look at anything the same way anymore. It would be ridiculous if I did. That would be a spiritual bypass. I would be going back and saying, yes, all this happened, but you know what? It's all God. It's all good. Well, it is all God, and it is all good, and I am a changed man. But I'm not diminished. I'm not less of who I was because I've had a very challenging year, and nor are you. For whatever reason you may have been challenged, for whatever has happened in your life, it has not diminished you. It has perhaps changed you, which is a good thing. And it's changed you for the best. And if you can just remember that, it has changed you for the best. Now you're ready to take your life and do exactly what that hawk is doing. So the gift of the Christmas hawk is this. Find the joy in flying. Find the joy in getting back into life and just being one with life, no matter what. No matter what's coming at you, fly it. Fly it in such a brilliant manner that nothing can derail you. It's all about perspectives. This month it's awake. Stay awake to the currents of your life. Pay attention to them. It's hard to use what's going on in your life if you're unwilling to look at what's going on in your life. You know how you get derailed? You're not paying attention. You are not awake in your life. You are not willing to look at it all and say, all right, this is happening. Fly. This is happening. I'm going to use it to my highest and best. We can only be the masters of our lives if we are willing to stay awake. And bless you, and be awake, Glenda. So I'm going to close with a quote by Swami Vivekananda. He says this, all the powers in the universe are already ours. It is we who have put our hands before our eyes and cry that it is dark. All the powers in the universe are already ours. It is we who have put our hands before our eyes and cry that it is dark. Here's a question for you. What if that hawk put its wings before its eyes? It would fall out of the sky. It would no longer do what it was innately designed to do. Its purpose would be gone. It is time for you and I, as we come to the end of another beautiful year, it is time for you and I to take our hands away from our eyes, be wide awake, see what's going on, acknowledge it all as the good that it can be, and then spread our divine energy and allow ourselves to be one with all of it so that we can fly unabashed. Namaste. Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.